What's up, lore masters? For those who don't know, as of the upload of this video, I'm engaging in a fun livestream activity with both Lore Runner and Jesse Gender. I generally do these on Sunday nights, and the objective of the project is to rewrite the various Star Trek series and movies, save for Disco-era Trek, and see if we can build something that's a little more cohesive, something better. Side note, I also watch these movies live on twitch.tv/Lore Reloaded every week. If you want to come hang out and watch them with me sometime, then definitely follow me there. Every week, a new movie till we're through them all. Looking at this week specifically, we analyzed and rewrote Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Interestingly, the motion picture doesn't have a lot of meat to it, so the rewrite isn't going to be too difficult, though the changes are pretty significant. Among the major impacts, we wrote Elia completely out of the movie and took her role that she would be in said film and gave it to Uhura. More on that in a minute. We did this in large part due to the fact that we are doing changes in the original series. The background of Uhura is that she will be having a relationship with Spock for Season 1 and Season 2 of the original series. During Season 3, Spock is not going to be included that much. That'll be explained when we get there. Because of this, that means their relationship would fizzle, which would cause Uhura to find and begin a relationship with Captain Decker. Looking at Captain Decker, he is confirmed to be the son of Commodore Decker, and after what happened with the Commodore, would find his ability to gain rank and progress in Starfleet stunted. The future Captain Decker would often find himself at odds with Captain Kirk, though these instances would be side notes or B-plots throughout the original series. However, despite all adversity, Decker would become captain of the Enterprise, being one of the best in Starfleet, save for possibly Kirk. In Season 3 of the original series, a new cast member would take the role of Science Officer. That would be Zahn, and he would be a staple and significant character. At this point, that's probably all you need to know about the changes we'll be doing in the original series, so we do have the background established. Let's take a look at the movie. Instead of Spock going through a ritual, he will be on the station that is ultimately destroyed by V'ger. Speaking of V'ger, it would be the actual ship and not a massive nebula that is several star systems wide. We're doing this largely because V'ger being near Earth means that Vulcan and Andoria are possibly destroyed at this point, not to even mention Mars. So again, we'll just be having it be the big ship, not some massive nebula. Again, back to the beginning, V'ger approaches the station, seeming pretty intent on destroying it. In our version, the Klingons move to intercept V'ger in a vain attempt to protect the station. These would be Klingons from the House of Gorkon, or they would at least be allied with Gorkon, which will become relevant in the future. V'ger would easily destroy them and the station. It would be presumed that all hands on board, including Spock, would be killed. The next scene is on Earth with Admiral Kirk and Zahn, similar to what occurs in the original. Kirk also meets Scotty and then states that he will be on the Enterprise. Like we see before, Kirk convinces the Admiralty to remove Captain Decker from command of the Enterprise. This causes a lot of outrage between the two, even more so than we saw in the original, with Decker stating that Kirk is intentionally keeping him out of the captain's chair. While he'll never say it, we'll know that a lot of the drive is also that Kirk is doing this because of what V'ger presumably did to Spock. Another change to the Trek mythos will be that transporters absolutely require having 2 transporter pads for safe travel. If you transport to somewhere that doesn't have a transporter pad, you will have a 60% chance, if not higher, of the person or persons being transported dying horrifically. Like we saw in the original movie, there will be an argument with Kirk and Decker and issues with the transporter pad. Unfortunately, the transporter on Enterprise would appear to be operational to Starfleet, however, it wouldn't be. When Starfleet attempts to beam over the science officer, Zahn, he would die like he did before. Unlike in the original movie, however, in our version, this would have an impact on the bridge crew who served with him and both Decker and Kirk. His death would come up throughout the movie and be felt. After this, the Enterprise moves to intercept V'ger. We don't have the wormhole in the middle of the system, it's not going to be an issue because that was very stupid. However, in our version, it would be obvious that while Kirk was an admiral, things would have passed him by. The technology of Enterprise and Starfleet would be substantially better, and Kirk would struggle to keep up and understand. He would rely on Sulu and, unfortunately, Decker to continue to help him with the advancements. Kirk realizes that Starfleet had promoted him, got him out of the captain's chair, and he was in a place he didn't want to be. He let Starfleet promote him, and that was a problem. As stated, we would also see the relationship between Uhura and Decker. Either they're together or had been together. This would be a substantial theme of the movie. The Enterprise arrives to confront V'ger, and while trying to communicate with it, Spock is beamed over to the Enterprise. He would be beamed over without a transporter pad. This would be a big deal and technology not observed. It would be something that they would talk about. Spock recovers and begins to act like he does in the original film. He tells them that V'ger is looking for something, but the only way to interact with it is through a conduit. Unfortunately, Spock wasn't compatible, though Spock is able to get a basic understanding with V'ger established. V'ger requires that Uhura be allowed to be transported over. Kirk, Decker, and Spock obviously have issues with this and state that she shouldn't be allowed to. Uhura volunteers and points out how Earth will be destroyed if she doesn't. She even notes that it won't stop with Earth, that V'ger could go on to destroy all of the other planets. Spock agrees, but concludes that the only way for her to interface with V'ger is for her to have cybernetic implants surgically inserted into her. McCoy obviously has drastic issues with this, but again is advised of what's at stake and ultimately does it. The procedure is successful, and Uhura calls out to V'ger telling it she's ready. She's beamed over, and some time will pass. Decker will have a ton of issues, with Spock being less emotional but still troubled. When the communication officer does return, she is somewhat like Elia. The interface was incomplete and not up to spec. Part of Uhura's mind is now with V'ger, and she's ultimately a drone, kind of like what we saw in the original. She's sent back to observe. Like in the original, Decker would be the one to try to interact with her, showing her things that they used to love to do to try to get through to her. One of the negative aspects is while there wasn't a complete connection, a connection did occur, which allows V'ger to experience emotions. V'ger would have the raw emotions, but no context or reservation to control them. V'ger would become angered, like we saw before, and childlike. This allows Kirk to have the standoff with V'ger and outwit it. He plays chicken and wins. V'ger pulls the Enterprise inside the ship and doesn't allow it to leave. We would see what Spock saw in the original movie with the massive civilization of non-biological entities. Kirk, Decker, and Spock would leave the Enterprise and go to find out what V'ger was, like we saw before. After some back and forth, they discover that V'ger did like the technology that Spock utilized and had enhanced it. However, unfortunately, it couldn't do anything more with Uhura and would need someone new. Spock, Decker, and Kirk would return to the ship and they would debate who would go. Through the communications officer, they would know that V'ger wants either Spock or Decker, though the drone seems particularly wanting of Decker to be the one to go. There is also a discussion that once the person returns, it could restore Uhura to who she was. This causes infighting as both want to give their lives for the communications officer, with Kirk trying to be diplomatic between both. During their conversations, Spock realizes that Decker has been there and available for the woman. He also was more emotional and understood how she felt a lot better. Spock wasn't on Decker's level, as he had originally been striving to be more Vulcan and couldn't be as emotionally available as the captain was. Spock, in a turning point and arc for his character, accepts this and starts to feel more emotion than he had. Decker is chosen to go to the interface so that he can try to help revive Uhura as well as stop V'ger. As Decker moves to leave the ship, Kirk stops him. After 3 seasons of antagonism, even if it's just a sidebar, and then the movie with Admiral Kirk and Decker at each other's throats, Kirk takes a deep breath, activates the communication so everyone on the ship can hear, and states, "Captain of the USS Enterprise, disembarking." He then salutes him. The bridge officers salute Decker, and as Decker passes various crew on his way to leave Enterprise, he's saluted by them all. He makes his way out to V'ger. He walks into a room which shuts behind him. Only a few minutes later, Uhura drone is transported back. On comms, everyone hears 2 voices in perfect unison. "We are Uhura and Decker. We understand now. We will return home." V'ger turns around and leaves to parts unknown. The conversation about a new life and baby is had with McCoy still, and the movie ends with Spock alone looking out a window into space. He's pretty somber. Kirk walks up to him and looks out as well. They both don't say anything for a moment, and then Spock shakes his head. "It's odd," the Vulcan says. "In all the time I was with her, all of the time we spent together, everything that happened, all of the events, it is at this moment, this very time, that I've never been more..." A brief pause as Spock thinks, happy for her. Kirk smiles faintly and looks back out. I understand, it's what makes you human. The camera pans out back to show the Enterprise before the fade and music. And that's pretty much how Lore Runner, myself, and Jesse Gender rewrote the motion picture. We may disagree on a few minor points here and there. Stay tuned when we take a look at The Wrath of Khan. Don't forget to follow me on Twitch to watch these movies, as well as here to get the rewrites. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next Lore Reloaded.